Today we shall be working on a 2008 BMW 325i, replacing the starter motor. As you can see, I have already dug pretty deep into this job. The manifold is loose and ready to come out, but I'm going to throw everything back on quickly to show you how I proceeded with this job. As this is my first time doing this, I had to, do it step by step to find out the best way for me to do it. I know there are ways other people do it without taking the manifold off, but I think it might be a little bit problematic for some people to handle that way. Again, please watch this video in its entirety before you start the job. Okay, first what we're going to do is disconnect the battery cable from here and down in here, negative and positive and negative down in there. And then we'll proceed to moving this cover right here. Okay, it's held down by two here and here. And then we will proceed to remove the airbox. All right, with that, there's two 10 millimeters holding this down. One here and one there. Once that's removed, with a Phillips screwdriver, you can undo the clamp from the bellows to the airbox, unplug the sensor right here, and simply by depressing this and pulling it off. Once that's done, I'll proceed to removing the bellows. Just trace this down to where it joins to the intake. It's a screw clamp like this with a Phillips screwdriver or the appropriate size socket. You can loosen that clamp and pull this out. I took this out in two pieces. You don't really need to. Okay, the other piece is down in here. All right, you just have to reach down through here, use a light, get down there, reach down through there, and undo that clamp, and that will pull out. And that's another clamp up top on this little hose. Make sure you get that too. Take your time, look around, and find these things. Trace it by hand until you feel the clamp, and loosen them. Okay, be careful when you're removing any rubber pieces, because sometimes they're dry and brittle, and if they are brittle, replace them. Okay, then I came up top. This one had a 10 millimeter here with a Phillips head to remove that. The one in the back was broken off, so I don't know if these are original. But if they're not 10 millimeter, find the appropriate size. Now to get to the back one, you will need to loosen this, to take this whole piece here off, because you need to access the screws that hold the manifold down from back there also. So simply to remove this top piece, you turn, there's three of these. One in the middle, one on this end, and one on this end. Just twist them like through 90 degrees, remove it, and this piece actually covers the cabin filter. Just simply pull that out. Once that is out, there will be four T30. I believe they're T30s. I could not find my T30, so I used a T25. It didn't fit properly, but thank God they were not too tight, and I was able to loosen them. And these are the screws look like this. Okay, once those four are loosened, this piece will come out. With this out of the way, next step is to remove, just pull this out. This harness right here, right, snaps under the carrier. Right here, this is the piece that holds the cabin filter. It snaps underneath here. So unsnap it, just pull it out. and come over here by the master cylinder, and that piece runs through here. Pull that out. What I did, you can spray a little WD-40 lubricant on here and wiggle this out. The vacuum for your power brake booster. Once that's done, there's 2 screws holding this cover in place. You need that out of the way. Okay, so remove these screws. These were like, I believe, 13 millimeter screws. One here and one in the back here. Once you have done that, get that harness out of the way, jiggle this, and you tilt it towards you and work it out of the way. Okay, with that done, we'll come over here and proceed to remove this cover here. With this, you see over there where it's broken? This cover, once you move that out, there's a number of screws holding the manifold down on the top, right under the fuel rail. Look down in there. There's one right here. Let me get my screwdriver and show you. I took one out of this hole right here. Right, there's one. There's 2 back here, and then there's 2 in line with each other here, 2 more here in line with each other, and then another one here and another one way up in the back. Once you have removed that, you should be able to wiggle the manifold around a little bit, but it will not come out because you have a bolt all the way down in here to attach. Usually when you have a manifold that overhangs like this, you will have it supported, you know, from a bracket that's below the manifold. All right, so you have to feel down. You can't really see it. You feel down underneath there, and I felt like a brace going across, and I traced it down to the block, ran my hand down to the block, and it turned out to be a 16 millimeter, I believe, 16 millimeter bolt that held that down, either 15 or 16. I'm pretty sure it was 16 that held that down to the block. But before getting to that, you have, that's a little, this piece right here that carries some of the wire harness will be attached, 1 screw right here and 1 screw on the other side. You have to loosen that so you can get access back here. I also loosened out the pipe for the dipstick. Trace that down, you'll find it's held on with 1 screw. Once you loosen that screw, you can get more movement in this area. And feeding your hand through here, tracing it down to where that bolt is that holds that. Once you do that, this whole attachment should be ready to come out. Okay, but be careful. There might still be some wires or hoses hooked up to it, so move it gently. If it wouldn't come all the way out, feel around it and see what's holding it on and detach those things gently. Okay, in moving this around, I can see that this piece right here is attached, and on inspection, I can simply pull it and wiggle it out because there's a bracket on there that this piece right here, see that slot right there, slides onto that bracket. So in freeing that from that, I have to jiggle it and see where else is being held. I can see some hoses up in the back, so I have to find the best way of disconnecting those, okay? Now, down underneath here, right, there's a quick connect hose like this where you press this piece right here. You squeeze that and pull it out. This here came from the valve cover. So all you do is you grab it on either side of it and squeeze it and wiggle it off. Same thing I had to do. Let me see if I can show you. Down here with this one right here. Okay? That attached at the bottom of the manifold. Okay, instead of pulling the manifold completely off because the wires for the injector rail are attached and a few other things are attached, I was able to move it a little bit out of the way, and there go the starter right down there. Let me get a light so you can see. Starter sitting right down there. Okay, now I hook up the battery, and what I decided to do was try to jump the starter. And at first, with the key, I was getting nothing, no current or anything, no sound coming up from the starter. But when I jump it, it seemed like it's locked. So right now, I'm thinking this engine is seized. This car was brought in. Somebody just bought this vehicle from someone who told them all it needed was a starter. And it appears that this engine is locked up. But I would try and turn the crank manually and see if I can turn it. If I cannot, oh God, I have lost this money on this deal. Now I'm trying to turn this by turning the fan. There's a big nut on the fan where the fan attaches to the pulley, and that size is 1 1/4 inch. Wrench fits that. Now I can get it to move. It sounds like it's under compression. When I move it in the other direction, it moves freely. As I was saying before, we were so rudely interrupted by the other phone. If I try to turn this engine counterclockwise, it turns as if it's under compression. If I turn it clockwise, it turns freely. And if I try to continue turning it clockwise, let me see what will happen. Still turning freely. Keep going that way and see if it locks up. Then I would say maybe we have a coolant leaking into the cylinder. What's going on here? Can I get it on? Okay, you don't need to watch all of this, but let me keep turning and see what happens. Okay, yes, I believe that's a hydraulic lock, so it might be water in the cylinder, 1 or 2 cylinders, because the engine turned maybe about half a turn freely or so, and then it locked up again. So my next move is to pull the spark plugs and see what happens. If there's water in the cylinder, it should come gushing out as I crank it. 2 days later, we're back to the drawing board. What I found was going on here is there's some corrosion in the cylinder, and that's why this baby was locking up. And taking the manifold off, see these gaskets here kind of messed up, and you have if you look on the block down here, you have little holes, and apparently some water was getting through and going because the gasket was messed up and getting in the cylinder. All right, that's a little, see this area right here? I would guess that's where the water was getting into the cylinder through here. And there might be other areas also. And because of that, and the car sat for months, corrosion developed in the cylinder. What I had to do is put some oil down each spark plug hole, let it sit a couple of days. And this vehicle indeed have a bad starter, but I'm going to jump it, and it should turn. A few days ago, it wouldn't turn at all, just a little bit and then jam up. Okay, starter doesn't work all the time. Let's see if we can catch it on a good spot. Give me a minute to find it. All right. Okay, so I'm pretty confident the cylinders are clear now, but I'm not sure what that compression is going to be, if there was any real damage done inside the cylinder, but we shall see later on. With your power disconnected from the car, we're going to proceed to take this starter out. There are 2 bolts in the back. You have to come in this way to take those bolts out. There's one of them, the one you're looking at right now with the ratchet and socket on it. It's the top one. The other one is kind of underneath the solenoid area, in that area. Not underneath, but generally in that area, roughly where the handle down in there on this side. I saw one video saying that you can do this job without taking the manifold off. I wouldn't attempt it, because just trying to get your hand back there with that ratchet and socket on, you won't be able to use a wrench. That's a taut head bolt, and I had to use 2 hands on that to break that bolt loose. Okay, so I don't see how you can get up in there with a wrench and take that off, especially with the manifold in place. All right, I just have this ratchet on so you will see the positioning. This is a double swivel ratchet. It swivels at the head and it also swivels down here. So you can move that around in different positions. Then I'm going to go ahead and take the wires off the starter right here. And there's a little one here and one down underneath. I've already sprayed them, so I won't run into any serious problem with things breaking off, hopefully, when I try to loosen the nuts. Right down here is the other bolt for the starter, and everything is loose, so this baby should come right out. I'd have to give it a little tap. Yes, I had to give it a pretty good whack right about there. Don't hit it on the solenoid, because especially if you're getting a reman, and you're going to have to turn this back in. I'm not even sure if it would make a difference, but I wouldn't do that. These screws are Torx E12, and what I found was once I broke them loose, and it turned out, but so far it became difficult to use the ratchet on there and wasn't loose enough to use my fingers. So what I did, I used a 10mm wrench to loosen it the rest of the way. It was tedious, but it worked. And I cannot imagine anybody doing this job with the manifold in the car, as I saw on one video. Okay, folks, it's a new day. I picked up the starter yesterday, and the intake manifold gasket set, which is on the left, and that tube you see sitting right there is valve grinding compound. Now, I'm not doing valves or anything of that nature, but I find this very useful, especially when you're trying to screw a nut or a bolt in a tight area, what I do is I place some of the compound on the thread and then take my finger and kind of spread it on the thread, and I run it through the hole like this one here. Run it in and out, and what that does is clean the thread. Even though this is a new starter, the bolt might have a little corrosion on it or whatever. Just run it in and out, and when you're done, this is what I do. After running it in and out a number of times, I get some starting fluid, or you can use brake clean or carburetor clean. But I always use starting fluid because on cleaning greasy stuff, dirty stuff, because it dries fast and leaves no residue. In this case, it wouldn't matter if it leaves a residue or not. Spray that down, spray it in the hole to clean that hole out. Okay, once you've done that, get a shop rag and wipe the thread off. You can feed a piece of shop rag in the hole all the way in and turn it and twist it around until you're sure that hole is nice and clean. And then what you do is you run the screw in again, and it should go in and out very easily. That way, when you're reaching in a difficult area like you will have to do on this car, you won't encounter much resistance in screwing that screw in the hole. Get a clean shop rag, hold it around the thread like this, and turn it as if you're loosening it, which would be in a counterclockwise position. But you keep turning it until the screw unscrew itself from the rag. That will help get any residue from the valve grounding compound off the thread and make it nice and clean. Then you take, again, that shop rag, shop towel, make it into a point, stick it in the hole, and turn it and clean that as best as you can. Screws in very easily. Okay? This should make the job a lot easier when you try to put the screw in to hold the solder in place. While taking this apart, I noticed that the socket would not fit on one of these all the way down. It was like going halfway down. So what I did, I used the same principle because of the rust on here. I used the same principle as I use on this thread part. Put some of the valve grinding compound on the top and work the socket in and out until it was able to fit in there properly all the way down. It's kind of awkward doing this thing with one hand. It's all the way down now. Before it was stopping like halfway down, and I was concerned that I was going to strip this head, and once it's stripped up in there, it would be all hell to get it out. All right, I have placed the two screws in place. As you can see, now I'm going to put the starter in and start the screws. Before putting the starter in place, I like to check and make sure that I have the right size socket or wrench for these screws here. Okay. It turns out they're exactly the same as the ones I used to take them out. At 8mm on this, the little one, and a 10 on the bigger one here. All right, this one I'm not worried about because you can see it easily, and as you do it, to pick out the right tool for it. Okay, as you know, this starter is held in by 2 screws, and but there are actually 3 holes in the starter. There is one here, okay, and there are 2 for the screws to go into. This one here on the housing is like a dowel pin right there that fits in this hole to align the starter. So just get that in place, line the pin up, and slide it in. Once you line it up and slide that pin into the hole, the starter will stay in position. Then you can proceed to turn the screw. I say the space is so tight, you won't be able to see me work the screw. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and tighten it. I'm actually turning the screw with just my thumb. If I hadn't cleaned the thread, I would have had a hard time getting it in. Now I've run this screw all the way in just with one finger, well, with one thumb. Okay, the starter in securely, nice and tight. And let me tell you what I found. I actually used, when I was taking this apart, a E14, but the true size for that screw head is 12. But I found when I tried to use it and putting it back in to tighten it, it was very difficult. In fact, I could not get that 12 to fit in there with the ratchet I was using because of the limitation in the space back there. So I had to go back and use the 14, and that worked fine. It did not slip. Okay, not quite finished with the starter job yet. Still have to connect the wires to it. But make sure when you're tightening, especially the big one that holds the positive wire cable, don't over tighten it, because this is like Bakelite plastic here. You could break that. All right. So if you want to, you can look up the torque specs, but I don't think it will be more than 10 foot-pound on that. That's just a guess. Now I'm gonna go and take care of the intake manifold area. What I'm gonna do is put pieces of shop towels, shop rag in these holes here, so I don't get any debris down in them, and clean up all this mess here. All right, and fill up all the holes with paper, the shop towels, and then clean this area out, get some compressed air and blow it off. All right, and I'll probably use my favorite cleaner, which would be starting fluid. Clean that off. And then after that, I'm gonna go around this side here and take off all the old gaskets and clean that area off also. What I will do is use a razor blade to just scrape the surface of this and scrape the surface down here. Or sometimes I'll use, what's the name of it? Scotch-Brite, and clean up the area. Okay, with the holes all plugged up with paper, take the razor blade and gently scrape around the hole. Take a little time, take your time. Once you've done that, then you can take this baby right here and just clean. Get all this stuff off. When that is off on all of them, do a better job than this. I'm gonna go over it some more. Right, then you clean the surface on the manifold. Valve cover, manifold, gasket, seat didn't need much cleaning, just basically a wipe off. Because the old one came out, didn't come out easily. Took a lot of tugging and trying to feed it out with a screwdriver, tiny screwdriver, trying to pry it out of the hole. But make sure while doing that you don't scratch or damage the surface. All right, so down there we have cleaned, where is it? Over there, as best as we could. And getting ready to mount this. Now, it will be difficult for me to show you the exact procedure, but we're going in reverse to the dismantle procedure. All right, make sure some of these hoses and wire connectors that were disconnected while removing get put on as snap back in place as you're installing the valve cover. As you slide it down, feel and find all these wires and stuff and put them back in place, because once you lock this down, you may not be able to get them back in place easily. And over here, inspect all these hoses and all the connections where the coolant run through. Make sure they're in good shape, because this is the best time to replace any piece that might need replacing in the near future.